the families and then make efforts to reunite them. But we're monitoring it, and of course we'll update you once we get updates on these investigations by the police.
Phil Ihaza, thank you so much for that. And of course, as he says, there's swift action from the Nigerian government, seeing some of those perpetrators already being brought to book. Let's turn now to news from South Sudan. The country's government says that Sudan's peace process led by the ruling council currently underway in Juba is progressing well. Now, Sudan's ruling council and rebel leaders started peace talks on Monday to end the country's multiple conflicts, a key condition for the country's removal from the United States Sponsors of Terrorism list. Being designated a state sponsor of terrorism cuts Sudan off from desperately needed debt relief funds, as well as financing from lenders such as the IMF and the World Bank. Removal from the list potentially opens a door for foreign investment. The chief mediator from South Sudan says the parties are now consulting on the roadmap for the process, and thereafter negotiations will begin.
We are going to discuss about the regions of Jebel Nuba, Darfur, Blue Nile and all other areas of the Sudan that have conflicts. We're doing this to make sure everyone is on board to achieve a lasting peace.
They are agreed on many of the technical issues. That they are finding each other on the ground is indeed encouraging, and we hope that they can get into substantive negotiations and make sure that indeed we do have a peace, lasting peace, sustainability, and make Sudan a better place.
Now, vote counting is underway in Mozambique following parliamentary, presidential elections on Tuesday. Voting proceeded relatively smoothly, but the opposition claims it recorded cases of ballot stuffing. The election pits the ruling Frelimo party against its arch-rival Renamo. Frelimo has ruled the country since independence in 1975, and President Filipe Nyusi is confident that he will be re-elected. The Renamo party is also hoping to win more political power following a recent peace deal with Frelimo. Preliminary results are expected on Thursday. Meanwhile, a week of voter registration is currently underway in Tanzania ahead of next month's local government elections. After a week, the government has now extended the exercise for 2 extra days. It's now set to end this Thursday. The Regional Commissioner of Dar es Salaam, Paul Makonda, says he will be patrolling entertainment spots in the city to ensure residents are registered. CGTN's Daniel Kijo reports.
The road to Tanzania's general elections next year starts with local government voter registrations in all regions of the country this week. As the clock winds down for voters' registrations to expire, one regional leader says he's determined to ensure his region is prepared. In just 2 days, he says the percentage of registered voters has increased from 8% to over 60%.
Let's congratulate ourselves as Dar es Salaam residents. And now, I call on to each one of us to convince and encourage others to come and register to ensure we get good leaders.
Local government leaders are the first contact between the Tanzanian central government and its citizens. They are responsible for managing public projects in infrastructure, health, economic and community development, environment, recreation, as well as maintaining the register of electors.
When they come, they tell us their names. We also write down their gender and age as well. After that, they write their signature. Once that is done, they wait for the election date.
In order to qualify as a local government leader, candidates must first be a member of or sponsored by a political party. The candidate must also be a Tanzanian citizen, at least 21 years of age, and able to read and write in Kiswahili and or English. The regional commissioner says electing good leaders is important to solving social and economic problems for the majority of Dar es Salaam residents as well as other citizens in all regions of the country. But there's a concern that a majority of citizens are not turning up to register, so this 2-day extension is aimed at providing more time for this important task.
These elections are important as they help us harmonize processes for when we head towards selecting district commissioners, members of parliament, and eventually The President of the United Republic of Tanzania,
As the clock winds down, each political party eagerly awaits the local government leaders' elections next month. These local elections will give a sense of how the main parties will do next year, because it shows a level of each party's presence within the local government structure. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. On World Food Day, what are African countries doing to reduce global hunger? We tell you more. And in Kenya, the White Cane Initiative helps to boost mobility among visually impaired persons.
CGTN Europe.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Today is World Food Day, and according to the World Food Programme, more than 800 million people globally are facing chronic hunger. About half the world's poor are said to be living in fragile or conflict-affected regions, with at least 95 million people facing acute food insecurity and 22 million others displaced annually due to climate-related disasters. The humanitarian agency says it's working to bring food assistance to more than 80 million of those worst affected by hunger in more than 80 countries around the world.
We are talking about conflict, climate, and economic marginalization. The unfortunate part is that it's one more year of the same story. So people who were marginalized, who were destitute last year, are even more destitute this year. And they are completely, totally in many places, particularly in conflict places, they are reliant on food assistance.
Now, staying with World Food Day, South Africa faces an impending food security challenge. Low food supply, population growth and food waste have been cited as some of the major causes of hunger. The country has begun to implement resilient agricultural practices with an aim to increase food production. One Urban Farm initiative is also educating the public on sustainable diets to help reduce food waste. Authorities hope this model will help make the country more self-sufficient and lift millions of people out of poverty.
The theme for this year is calling for our actions and that determine our future. So the World Food Day calls on all sectors to ensure that there's healthy, sustainable diets, and these must be accessible for all. So it's a call to action for all of us to ensure that healthy food is available to all.
Food is a complicated system for all of us, and it's a bit weird that South Africa is considered food secure, but so many people are hungry, or what they call food insecure. And a lot of that is about distribution and cost and cultural preference and infrastructure. Poor people don't have fridges and those kinds of things in many cases. So what we struggle to do is within that system to find local ways to help to address it, and these kind of urban farms are one way of doing that, by bringing people together, raising their consciousness, helping them work together to make some better choices about the food that they buy, where they source it from, how they cook it, how they share it, and those kinds of things.
And turning to the Democratic Republic of Congo, millions of people are reported to be food insecure due to conflict, displacement and the high cost of living in major cities. The World Food Programme has ranked the DRC as the second largest hunger crisis after Yemen. The UN is marking World Food Day to create awareness about those who are suffering from hunger. CGTN's Crystal Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Matondo Kinkosi is a mother of 7 living in the DRC capital, Kinshasa. She does petty trade to sustain her family, but her earnings aren't enough to provide her children 3 meals a day.
We only eat twice a day, breakfast and supper, because I can't afford to feed my children 3 times. The cost of living here is very high.
Matondo is among many Congolese women who are struggling to feed their families. The World Food Programme estimates that the number of food insecure people in the DRC doubled from 7.7 million in 2018 to 13 million last year.
DRC represents worldwide the second largest crisis in the world. We have more than 13 million people that are food insecure. And you also may consider that more of 5.8 children and women are suffering from acute malnutrition in the country.
The situation has been fueled by armed conflict and displacement, especially in the east of the country. As the rest of the world marks this day dedicated to tackle world hunger, one Congolese analyst hopes the new DRC government will address the problem.
The first solution for improving the food insecurity in our country is to build roads connecting our cities to the rural areas. Secondly, the government should support local farmers to get better prices for their produce.
The World Food Day is marked annually on the 16th of October in honor of the establishment of the Food and Agriculture Organization. This day generates awareness globally for those who suffer from hunger. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi told members of the UN General Assembly that his country could be part of the solution to end poverty and hunger given its 80 million hectares of farmland and water resources. Citizens like Matondo Kinkosi hope that pronouncement will be made a reality sooner rather than later. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Well, turning to some other news now, a white cane is a device used by many who are blind or visually impaired to scan their surroundings for obstacles. However, it can be limiting as it can only reveal obstacles of a certain height. Well, on this White Cane Awareness Day, CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa shares the story of a young Kenyan innovator who's come up with an invention that, paired with the traditional white cane, can increase the mobility of visually impaired people.
Dorothy Atieno lost her eyesight as a child, so the white cane in her hand gives her clues to help her find her way around. It tells her where there's an incline, a slope, or even an uneven surface she needs to tread carefully on. But the white cane can only tell her so much. While the white cane warned visually impaired people of obstacles on the ground, they were often unaware of obstacles that were much higher.
If there's a low-hanging branch or these signs that are hung up on the streets, I'll usually knock my head or if there's a bar across the road, I'm not sure, I usually knock my head, my shoulder on things that are not at ground level, but they are up over my face or shoulders.
And it was in an attempt to solve this problem that Brian Mwenda created the Fourth Eye device. Brian, an engineer, studied at an integrated secondary school. There he noted that many visually impaired persons were often unable to pursue their dreams because they couldn't move around without a fair amount of help.
If you can't move confidently, then you can't access education, you can't access employment. And I've met people who have gotten job offers, but they've turned them down because they can't access the place of work.
So he created the Fourth Eye device, a little handheld gadget which slides over and attaches to a white cane.
Once you switch it on and you point it to an obstacle, it's going to vibrate And depending on the intensity of the vibration, you can feel how far the obstacle is.
It means Dorothy can now go to school and work confidently.
Now I haven't been bumping into parked cars and having alarms go off around me, which used to be a fairly common occurrence.
But only a limited number of visually impaired people have tried out the gadget. The device, which was launched in Kenya in August, sells for $100 and comes with a white kin, a price which may still be out of the reach of many. Brian is working on another invention, one that, if successful, will eliminate the need for a white kin. But Atieno's dreams are slightly different. She hopes for a voice-guided gadget into which she will be able to program her destination. Both believe every bit of progress is yet another step in the right direction. Bulkisa Nyabo, CGTN.
Well, across the world, there are a myriad of challenges confronting people living with disabilities. Despite discrimination they suffer, some are finding opportunities to address their problems and even empower others while at it. That's the case of a young Nigerian lady who, having lost her limbs, founded a charity organization that now provides free artificial limbs to individuals living with disabilities. Here's Deji Badmus with more.
In 2006, Aderonke Oguntuashe set out on a journey from her hometown. Little did she know that she wouldn't return the same. She was involved in a road accident that cost her her limbs, an incident that altered the course of her life and kick-started her humanitarian initiative.
I had to get artificial limbs so that it will enable me, complete my studies. So I got a local limb from Kano Hospital, which is Dala General Hospital at Kano, and that limb was so terrible. I can't explain it. It's even more painful and more frustrating than the amputation itself.
The discomfort became unbearable for Aderonke, and to make matters worse, she couldn't find any prosthetic center in the country to come to her rescue.
I sent my cast to Germany, and they imported it back to me, and also imported other parts, other components, like the foot. They sent me the foot, the pylon, and every other thing. So, and the cosmetic covering, the foam cosmetic covering. So that was how I was able to get my artificial limb, my functional artificial limb.
Those challenges would become an opportunity for Aderonke to cater for others like her. And that began her Aderonke Rehabilitation Network, through which she carries out her humanitarian work of giving prosthetics to disabled persons with her kind of condition.
So I discovered that there are foundations outside Nigeria, in the UK and US, that support or donate some prosthetic parts, components to Africa. So I contacted them, and we talked. So they decided that they are going to support this foundation, because this foundation is really doing a good work to help amputees in Nigeria. So they are able to support me with all these components we are seeing on the shelf. They donated these components.
Aderonke often holds a one-on-one session like this one with her beneficiaries to monitor their progress, discuss any challenge arising from the use of her prosthetics, and prefer solutions. And in most cases, the encounter ends in smiles.
I wasn't looking smart before. When I'm working, I work with just one leg most times. Yeah, even though I don't sleep with it, yes, I do pull it off when I want to sleep, yeah. But when I'm going out now, I put it on, I look so smart, I'm happy about it.
The truth is, the prosthetics helps to enhance one's ability. Whatever you're doing, it gives you a lot of able-bodiedness, and it helps you to move much better.
Aderonke is putting back smiles on the faces of the beneficiaries of a humanitarian initiative. In less than 2 years of its existence, her Aderonke Rehabilitation Network has empowered over 100 amputees across Nigeria. But the organization still has over 500 on its database that need help. Aderonke says if government and private partners can assist with funding, she would be able to assist more persons with functional artificial limbs and put that smile on more faces. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Abuja.
Let's take a short break. Here's what's coming up in your business news up next. The International Monetary Fund warns of tough times ahead as tensions remain between the world's top two economies. Doctors in Zimbabwe stay home as the government insists that negotiations can only happen when they resume duty.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start here in Kenya now, where the 120-kilometer Nairobi-Naivasha standard gauge railway line has been commissioned after 3 years of construction. In commissioning of the second phase of the railway, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta officially paved the way for passenger and cargo services between Nairobi and Naivasha. The president also commissioned the construction of the Nairobi Expressway project at a cost of about $500 million. It will take 3 years to complete. The standard gauge railway line is expected to ease the movement of goods and increase regional trade. It connects the coastal city of Mombasa via the capital Nairobi to the resort town of Naivasha, where a dry port is under construction. Now, the International Monetary Fund has warned that trade battles are putting the global economy in a precarious position. The organization is reducing economic growth forecasts for almost all major economies. It's also concerned that its call for coordinated action in the event things get worse may be difficult in the current political climate. CGTN's Owen Fairclough reports.
A stark warning from the International Monetary Fund's chief economist.
The global economy is in a synchronized slowdown, and we are once again downgrading growth for 2019 to 3%. Its slowest pace since the global financial crisis.
Just 12 months ago, the IMF was touting what it called steady growth, but trade wars waged by the Trump administration with partners including China have taken their toll and backfired on the US. The IMF sees US economic output falling by 0.5% next year, while China's would fall 2%, though some economists think China's prospects are much better due to reforms.
Policymakers must undo the trade barriers put in place with durable agreements, rein in geopolitical tensions, and reduce domestic policy uncertainty.
Those trade barriers may start to fall after the US and China last week verbally agreed a partial deal to resolve their trade battle. This would improve growth prospects everywhere for the IMF, if that deal is signed off. But if conditions worsen, the IMF says an international coordinated response would be required, the kind of stimulus measures taken by global leaders in the wake of that financial disaster in 2008. And yet the Trump administration's America First strategy is being copied by other populist leaders around the world, and they're less interested in consensus than their predecessors. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Well, for more on the global economy, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, discussed trade disputes, climate change and other issues in a wide-ranging interview with CGTN. Here are some excerpts.
Madam Georgieva, what are your priorities as the new managing director of IMF, and how do you see the role of emerging markets such as China in those efforts?
The most immediate priority is to prepare for a slowdown should it occur and make sure that the IMF is supporting countries, especially those that are more vulnerable to changing global economic conditions. Longer term, the role of the IMF is to help countries build strong economies to improve the lives of people on the foundation of sound economic policies. And we concentrate on working with authorities on monetary policies, fiscal policies, and very importantly, structural reforms to prepare for changing demands in the future.
And how would you characterize the relationship between the IMF and China over the past years, and how do you want this relationship to go?
What we have seen is that China very systematically has been engaging multilaterally very much with the IMF. China has learned from experience in other places and from the staff of the IMF, and the IMF has learned from the experience of China to transmit to other countries, especially emerging market economies. China is at a very important point of transitioning from more attention to the quantity of growth to the quality of growth. And while the economy is slowing down, it is producing improvements in the well-being of people. China holds the record in lifting people out of poverty and continues to keep strong focus on eradicating poverty altogether. The IMF has been very much engaged to support China's monetary fiscal policies, and what we have seen is this gradual improvement, more openness, more flexibility of the RMB. The exchange rate is let to move according to markets. We are looking very much forward to continuing this very strong partnership with China in the years ahead.
On the trade tensions, in your assessment, what has been the impact of trade tensions on global growth and your message to parties involved?
What we have been saying for quite some time is that we have to protect the benefits of trade because it is so valuable for growth, for jobs, for poverty reduction. And yet we have seen trade tensions creating both direct negative impact on growth and indirect impact by eroding confidence. We are calculating now that by 2020, the world's GDP will be 0.8% smaller. This is an equivalent of $700 billion, not insignificant. And everybody loses as a result of trade tensions.
No work, no negotiations. That's the Zimbabwean government's message to striking doctors who defied a court order to report for duty by Monday. The doctors say they can't afford to go back to work because their wages have been eroded. CGTN's Farai Makutoya has more.
Well, the standoff continues here as doctors remain defiant after rejecting a 60% salary increment offered by government last week. That would have taken their salaries to just above $100 per month. They're demanding a raise of at least 400% to keep up with the spiraling cost of living. Government says it can't afford that and has asked the doctors to return to work while negotiations continue. On Tuesday, the Ministry of Health said it was pursuing arbitration to resolve the wage dispute which has paralyzed services at public hospitals where patients have been turned away and only emergency cases are being attended to by military doctors who've been called in to assist. The arbitration negotiations are expected to take 14 days. Meanwhile, in a development that could also affect government services, trade unions representing civil servants have issued notice of incapacitation, meaning that their members can no longer afford to go to work. Public servants have been demanding US dollar-linked salaries. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The Cote d'Ivoire Employers Forum, known as the CGECI Academy, has concluded in the country's capital, Abidjan. The 8th Economic Forum was chaired by Rwandan President Paul Kagame. It's all about identifying strategic areas for improvement, particularly by increasing the efficiency of the business ecosystem in Africa and beyond. CGTN's Alexandria Majala reports.
About 5,000 young entrepreneurs, including 1,000 business leaders from across the continent, were in Abidjan for the 8th edition of the CGECI Academy. This year's theme was Business Environment, what model for business development in Africa. Rwandan President Paul Kagame lauded the CGECI Academy's efforts to offer investment opportunities in entrepreneurship and innovation at the national level.
The Ivorian private sector is an inspiration because of its productivity, dynamism, and resilience. This has contributed to the recovery and rapid development of this great nation. The potential of Ivorian business to grow and be a pillar of this region and our continent's economy is very evident.
According to experts, Côte d'Ivoire has made enormous progress thanks to structural reforms, but there are still challenges ahead.
Investor interest in our African countries is also exacerbated by open market policies, one of the most significant of which is the implementation of a continental free trade area to promote intra-African trade. Challenges about the business environment are many. They boil down to the fact that in many of our states, companies are faced with regulations that are sometimes too restrictive and changing, red tape, a tax burden that is hard to sustain for formal sector, or difficulties in accessing national and regional public or private markets.
Business leaders, on their part, made the most out of the forum, inviting each other to collaborate to improve the business climate in Africa.
I am a company manager and I came to share what I know, but I learned a lot here today. We would like to thank President Paul Kagame, who has been very modest in coming here to speak directly to the business leaders. Progress is visible in Côte d'Ivoire, and we believe that the private sector can also help the Ivorian and African economies to evolve.
Taxation is an obligation in all countries. Now the challenge is how to make taxes help Ivorian companies to progress. And I think there's a huge effort being made by the government, and we have to recognize that.
At the end of this meeting, participants agreed that Côte d'Ivoire should make every effort for a real development of entrepreneurship because according to the latest Trade 20 Index report, Côte d'Ivoire appears as the country with the highest rate of potential trade growth in the world. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Now, senior officials and experts from across Africa have also concluded the Square Kilometre Array Africa Partner Countries meeting in Pretoria, South Africa. The event received updates on the progress made in each partner country. With the details, here's CGTN's Angela Coppola.
The SKA site has a new addition under construction. It's a dish that was designed in Germany and built in China.
This improvement, for me, is striking because when I compare this with the meerkat, which we are more accustomed to, that one looked a bit more bulkier for me, but this is a bit compact. And I think it provides us an opportunity that should we have one like this, it's something that looks like it's a bit more manageable.
Ghana is moving ahead with its program. It's entered the second phase, the engineering phase, coupled with the science commissioning phase. Visiting the SKA site in the Northern Cape has been a real eye-opener.
It's great to be here. This tells us that there's a lot to do when we go back home. Science is picking up over here, and which is very interesting because there are lots has gone in here. Money has been spent, and I believe they will recoup what they have spent over here.
Kenya is one of the SKA partners that's closely involved in the program. They're looking at an existing dish owned by Telkom Kenya and converting it into a radio telescope.
Our recent assessment and the learnings from the conversion that took place in Ghana has taken us back to rethink of establishing a whole new dish for purposes of this kind of research.
The continental partners involved in the program are excited. It's important for each country for different reasons.
That will put my country, within all these advanced countries, So it would just give some sort of visibility to the country. That's the one thing. Second thing, for the science, we believe that if we do not have the proper scientists for the next generation, that will be the end of the day.
Astronomy was on the lower side when you come to Ghana. So after the conversion of the dish and through outreach programs, people have started picking it up, especially where we have the antenna.
While the science is exciting, it's also about the collaboration between other African countries and countries around the world in getting to better understand what's going on in the universe around us and beyond. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in the SKA site in the Northern Cape of South Africa.
Time for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, Tripoli hit by a garbage crisis as tons of trash piles up on the streets.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
To Libya now, where the country's capital, Tripoli, is choking on garbage. The buildup of trash reflects the steady decline of public services since the country was cut off during this 6-month military offensive. CGTN's Laura Walubengo has more.
Molds of trash continue to pile up in Tripoli. It's been like this for the past few months, and now health officials are sounding an alarm on the worsening situation.
There's a hospital, a pharmacy and a shop in front of the area where rubbish is dumped. When they set it on fire, you cannot sit in front of your home. The smoke even gets inside the house.
Residents are now calling for urgent intervention as the buildup of rubbish has reached unprecedented levels.
This is a big issue. There are nasty smells, germs, insects and microbes. It's a big issue and now it's becoming unmanageable. There are cases of people suffering from respiratory illnesses. I know many cases.
The situation has further been worsened by a campaign to capture Tripoli, launched by Eastern-based forces led by Khalifa Haftar.
The road leading to landfill of Sidi Al-Sai is closed because of the war, and trucks cannot go there to avoid any harm. We are now packing the rubbish down to have more space. Currently, the landfill is full.
Despite ongoing sporadic fighting in the city's outskirts, life in central Tripoli continues as normal. Only this time they're forced to keep windows closed to protect themselves from the harmful effects of toxic fumes. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news, up next. 10,000-meter world champion Joshua Cheptegei becomes the first Ugandan to be nominated for the World Athletics Male Athlete of the Year award.
Africa Live. Find your voice.